By the summer of 1945, the war in Europe was over. Nazi Germany had surrendered, but the Pacific War dragged on. On island after island, Allied forces faced fierce resistance, locked in a brutal, costly grind that showed no signs of stopping. To end it, Allied commanders prepared for Operation Downfall, a massive, full-scale ground invasion of the Japanese home islands. Planners projected the cost in blood would be staggering. Estimates suggested nearly 1 million additional Allied casualties if the troops hit the beaches of Kyushu and Honshu. But there was a top-secret alternative. Hidden away in laboratories across the United States, scientists working on the Manhattan Project had successfully produced the first 2 types of functional atomic bombs. In July 1945, they detonated the first device in the New Mexico desert. The Trinity test proved the weapon was viable. The energy released exceeded all expectations for its destructive capability. Later that month, Allied leaders issued the Potsdam Declaration. It demanded the unconditional surrender of the Japanese armed forces. The alternative, they warned, was prompt and utter destruction. The Japanese government ignored the ultimatum. Faced with horrific projected losses from a ground invasion and armed with a newly proven technology, the strategic calculus of the war shifted. The decision was made to drop the bomb. Target selection was handled by a specialized committee in Washington. They deliberately sought out large, intact urban areas that held significant military and industrial facilities, looking for locations relatively untouched by the conventional firebombing campaigns. Kyoto was originally on the list, but it was removed to spare its deep cultural and historical significance. That left the industrial and military hub of Hiroshima as the primary target for the first strike. In the early hours of August 6th, a specialized B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay took off from the Mariana Islands. In its bay sat an enriched uranium gun-type weapon codenamed Little Boy. The bomber cruised flawlessly at 31,000 feet. Down below, an early air raid warning had been cleared. By 8 in the morning, thousands of civilians in Hiroshima were stepping outside, heading to work and school, beginning their normal daily routines. A highly precise mechanical military operation was about to collide with a city unaware of its fate. For the first time, a single aircraft held the power to destroy an entire urban center in one instant. At exactly 8:15, the bomb detonated directly over the Shima Surgical Clinic. People on the ground reported a pika, a brilliant, blinding flash of light, instantly followed by a dawn, a massive, crushing boom. The explosion released energy equivalent to 16 kilotons of TNT. The temperature at the epicenter reached millions of degrees, creating a shockwave that obliterated the city center within a 1-mile radius. The human toll was staggering. While Hiroshima housed a military garrison of roughly 24,000 troops, some 90% of the dead were civilians. By the end of 1945, the blast and its immediate aftermath had claimed between 90,000 and 166,000 lives. Those who survived the initial blast emerged into an unrecognizable landscape. Small fires quickly merged into a massive firestorm that swept through the crushed wooden structures, trapping thousands in the ruins. Desperate for sanctuary from the intense heat, many threw themselves into Hiroshima's rivers. These survivors would soon be known as the Hibakusha, the explosion-affected people. On the ground, survivors experienced the detonation as the arrival of an apocalyptic horror, a sudden, total destruction that replaced military logic with absolute chaos. 3 days later, on August 9th, Japan was reeling but had not yet surrendered. The United States military launched its second atomic mission. Dense cloud cover over the primary target of Kokura forced the bomber Boxcar to divert. The crew released their payload over the secondary target, the port city of Nagasaki. This weapon was a plutonium implosion device, even more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima. The surrounding hillsides of the Uirikami Valley confined the blast somewhat, but it still leveled the industrial and civilian heart of the city, killing between 60,000 and 80,000 people. Then came the invisible killer. In the days and weeks that followed, survivors who appeared entirely uninjured by the blasts began to fall ill. They were suffering from acute radiation syndrome, a condition doctors at the time barely understood and had no means to effectively treat. Shortly after the explosions, a dark, oily substance known as black rain fell, carrying highly radioactive fallout back down to the ground. Survivors faced a long-term medical nightmare marked by severe keloid burns, suppressed immune systems, and lingering radiation sickness. With conventional bombs, the danger ended when the dust settled. The atomic bomb poisoned the very environment, inflicting casualties long after the explosion itself had faded. The conflict ended abruptly. On August 15th, 6 days after the bombing of Nagasaki and the Soviet Union's sudden invasion of Manchuria, Japan announced its surrender to the Allies. On September 2nd, the Japanese government signed the formal instrument of surrender on the deck of the USS Missouri. World War II was officially over. Today, this chart outlines the core of a historical debate that has endured for decades. On one side stands the argument that the bombs forced a surrender, preventing the projected millions of casualties an invasion would have caused. On the other sits the stark ethical reality of weaponizing mass civilian death to achieve that goal. Amidst that debate stands the resilience of the Hibakusha. Some individuals, like Tsutomu Yamaguchi, were in Hiroshima on business, survived the blast, and traveled to Nagasaki just in time to endure the second bomb. Many of these survivors spent the rest of their lives advocating for global nuclear disarmament. Both cities were meticulously rebuilt from the ashes. In Hiroshima, the skeletal remains of the Prefectural Industrial Promotion Hall were preserved exactly as they were left on the morning of August 6th. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain the first and only uses of nuclear weapons in an armed conflict. They stand as a permanent, physical reminder of the devastation of total war.